Donald Trump begins his second term in office less than a month from now, he has promised to make America great again, or Maga, in his second term. Now, at the heart of the Maga movement are some very significant people of Indian origin. But in the last few days, we've seen a torrent of social media abuse directed at some of these prominent Trump appointees, particularly Sriram Krishnan, Senior Policy Advisor for Artificial Intelligence in the White House. Now, these attacks have come from Laura Loomer. She's a far-right activist and a staunch Donald Trump supporter. She's targeted Indian immigrants, describing them as third world invaders, and they come from a country which she says has an IQ of 70. Has immigration already become a bone of contention among the Maga faction in the US? And why has H-1B visas become the bone of contention between Trump acolytes? And will this backlash continue past President Trump's inaugural? And most importantly, are these online hate attacks on Indians going to get worse in the days ahead? Joining me is Abhijit Iyer Mitra and Pramit Pal Chaudhary.
Yes, thank you.
Pramit, what's going on in the US right now? There's war within the Maga, Trump supporters gunning for each other. Make sense of what you see right now on social media, especially the attacks on Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah, well, first keep in mind it's social media. There's been no official commentary by anybody of any consequence in the Trump team or by Trump himself. And quite possibly they're not really paying that much attention to this. They're not in power yet officially,
Right.
not until next month, not another month to go. So I wouldn't get too excited by this. Loomer, as you've mentioned, is a social media influencer, takes very extreme right-wing positions. She's endorsed Trump, if I remember correctly, and has been thing. But Trump has many social media influences. And the MAGA spectrum, if you wish, incorporates everything from extremist anti-immigrant people to libertarians like Elon Musk, who supports all immigrants. He thinks immigration is a great idea. So what exactly it translates into policy is not clear. Loomer seems to have, if I'm correct, picked up a statement by Krishnan saying that regarding H-1B visas, which are the high-skilled working visas that America issues, a small number every year, bulk of which are taken by Indian IT workers. Within the H-1B visa system, there is a country quota. So he basically says, so India, each country gets a certain quota. And he basically said he feels that country quota should be lifted. In other words, there should be no more country quotas, but the total number of H-1B visa he has no comment about. So she latched onto that and seems to have assumed or deliberately misconstrued that to mean that he wants to basically have unlimited H-1B visas, which he did not say at all. And that has triggered in return a long-standing resentment among a group of American tech workers that Indian tech workers under the H-1B visa program end up depressing their salaries or denying them certain kinds of jobs. So therefore, that's sort of brought back an old issue that keeps coming back and has kept coming back over the past at least 25 years, as far as I can remember going back, hearing these type of things. It's nothing particularly new. It isn't necessarily even MAGA, even when the Democrats have been in power. You may remember that Obama said Buffalo versus Bangalore, that he would prefer the jobs be in Buffalo rather than in Bangalore. John Kerry campaigned also against H-1B, and ironically it was a Republican, George W. Bush, who said, I don't have a problem with that. So it's been around. It's just been picked up in a slightly extreme version in this case. What it will reflect in terms of policy yet, we don't know.
So, Abhijit, are these the opening shots of a larger war against H-1B visas, as Pramit was saying, that, Trump has said recently, a few months back, that he's going to allow college grads to get H-1B visas. And obviously there's a very influential sect within the Maga supporters who are very worried with this so-called influx of H-1B visas. You see that as snowballing into something more sinister than this?
No, I think this is going to die a very natural death, and I'll tell you why. Remember, the entire Maga campaign was against illegal immigrants into America. They celebrate legal immigrants into America. Remember, Elon Musk himself is a legal immigrant.
As is Vivek Ramaswamy.
As is Vivek Ramaswamy, right? So these guys, and let's be clear, they are fringe influencers of Trump. Laura Loomer is a nobody. Mike Chernovich and Jack Posobiec, who are playing neither here nor there. They want to highlight abuse of the H-1B visa system. They're not completely in the Loomer camp as such. These are all people who have been left out of the cabinet. It's very personal for them because they see somebody like Sriram Kari. I'm not body shaming anyone here, but the word used on the internet was, he looks like Frankenstein. That Frankenstein and Vivek Krishnan and Usha Vance, Usha Vance's husband, are getting cabinet slots, and they're not. You saw a lot of this in 2014 as well, where a lot of social media influencers thought that when Modi comes to power, being a social media influencer somehow gets you a cabinet slot. This is a case of sour grapes, and very high self opinions that are unmatched with real life experience. I mean, realistically, what is Laura Loomer going to be in the cabinet for? What is Mike or Jack Posobiec going to be in the cabinet for? Nothing really, right? The second aspect of this is we should remember every right-wing movement, like every left movement, has its loony left. Every right-wing movement has its loony right, which is usually a very thin sliver. This is that thin sliver. The problem is none of this would have made the news had it not been for Indians wanting to react to everything that is said about India. In many ways, we've made it the big news that it is.
But Elon Musk reacted to it as well. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, they all
dismissed it, saying that this lady is she's engagement farming. She's seeking a reaction. Just ignore her. He took away her blue tick. I don't agree with taking away the blue tick and the monetization, but he did that nevertheless, right? So this is not going to be an issue. The American experience celebrates. It is an immigrant culture. They celebrate the
American
coming
dream.
in for the American dream to make America a better place and to make their own lot better, right? So this thing that they're coming in for third world countries or whatever, it's not something that resonates with anybody in America, really.
It doesn't resonate with anyone. I'm going to ask Surinder Lali this. Surinder, you've been tracking the social media war that's on, as Abhijit was saying. The spectrum of the Maga is at war. There's a far right, and of course there's a center of right, which is attacking them as well. But how do you see this, debate playing out in the months ahead? Is H-1B visa going to be back in the news again, given the fact that the Trump administration has a very favorable view on H-1B, increasing the number of H-1B visas, perhaps?
Thank you, Sandeep. And I wouldn't worry about it much. And let me tell you, I went to school and college in the United States, and not just in the US, but I went to college in the state of South Carolina. And, Charleston was where all the slaves were brought and the Civil War that started. So, and on top of that, I was in a absolutely white fraternity. I'm a Pi Kappa Phi. So I've been witnessing this off and on for the last 30 some years because I still keep going back. And earlier it was more to do with just, racial profiling in terms of brown skin. And back in the 90s, there was also a gang called the Dot Busters in New Jersey who would simply go out and harm Indian women who wore darts in their head. But that is a time when we were only, limited to owning gas stations and motels. But now Indians are all over the place.
They're the most prosperous immigrant community in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, after the Jews, we're the highest per capita income in yes. So, I wouldn't worry about it much. And, somewhere that question itself is a bit ironical because Donald Trump really stood for anti-immigration and a lot of anti-immigration. I'm surprised that Elon Musk was also kind of brushed with the same, stroke. But a lot of anti-immigration in the U.S. is to do with people with with dark skin. Now, the
Yes.
Mexicans who come across the border come for just menial jobs, and the Indians are, today getting into the positions of power, right from NASA to Lockheed Martin to
Right.
Shell,
Right.
to Boeing. So I wouldn't take, because, what does it take to go on social media and start, talking shit? I'm sorry to say that.
Yes.
So I wouldn't worry. And the way now Indians are coming into a position of power, especially being visible, we're a very strong lobby, a lot of congressmen, and the way Donald Trump is hiring these people.
Yes.
So somewhere it's pretty much like the situation where Elon Musk has most of his business in China, and yet he's part of the Donald Trump's, new team, and probably the next George Soros in the making. But that's a different discussion for a different day. But I wouldn't worry about it much, because if anything, I'd wear it as a badge of honor, because I'm not going to worry about people who are probably insecure or not that much of consequence, because they couldn't do much in their own country, and then we could travel 12,000 miles away and make a future for ourselves and contribute to the American economy. I mean, imagine
Yes.
if there were no Indians, where would Silicon Valley be, or where would NASA be, or where would Lockheed Martin or Boeing, or a lot of these companies would be. So for me, I take it as a compliment.
Pramit, we've seen a large number of people of Indian origin in the Trump cabinet. 5 appointments there, including the director of the FBI. It's possibly the largest number of Indian Americans that we've seen in any U.S. government. What is this board actually for Indo-U.S. ties? Are you going to see a more appreciative government there, given the fact that you have people like Kash Patel in the FBI, whose views on India are very well known?
Yes, one of the interesting things we've seen in the Republican Party is that the Indian Americans have proven to be one of the more active and vocal minority populations.
Right.
If you look at two governors, Bobby Jindal in Louisiana, Nikki Haley in South Carolina, the 2 first Indian American governors were both Republicans. And we've seen an unusually large number of Indian Americans and Asian Americans in general in the Republican Party, even though the bulk of Indian Americans vote in favor of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
That figure has been shrinking a bit. So you have an interesting space that has developed there. And because they're so highly educated, and the most highly educated minority ethnic population in the country, they will automatically be important in terms of both their intellectual capacity,
yes,
as well as their financial donations, because as has been mentioned, we are either the number 1 Indian Americans, or either the 1 or 2 the richest, wealthiest ethnic group in most years. So as a consequence, within the Republican Party, they've been very powerful. What has been interesting in the Trump administration has been the marriage of Silicon Valley, which has
yes,
traditionally been very liberal-minded, the tech sector has traditionally been Democratic supporters. They have become very closely linked, or large chunks of it, with the Trump administration, in partly a response, I would argue, their belief that the Democrats have sort of lost track of what they should be doing, especially when it comes to the economy and tech regulation and so on. And that has resulted in people like Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, and as you know, an unusually large number of billionaires and centillionaires into the Trump administration, many with a tech background. It helps that Trump admires those type of people.
Right.
He's not really interested in he doesn't see any reason to be concerned about whether a person has a working class background and so on. He's a businessman. He likes businessmen. He thinks that they're the guys who get things done. So that combination has resulted in an unusually large number of Indian Americans. And what is also going to be interesting, because we've seen this now for 3 administrations in a row, many ways, in fact, you can go back to the George W. Bush administration, has been the rise of a strategic technology relationship between India and the United States.
Yes.
Believed by both sides, especially by the Americans, that creating or building up India as a technology partner is both commercially important to the United States, as well as strategically important in facing a common enemy, which is the rise of China, which is very clearly determined to be the dominant technology power in the 21st century.
Right, absolutely.
And Silicon Valley and the Indian American community show that this works. They can actually show on the ground that here you have a group of people who have shown that they can combine India and the United States in the technology sector.
Right. Indian Americans in Silicon Valley, and Abhijit is looking at the names of the CEOs of key Indian origin CEOs in Silicon Valley: Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, Neil Mohan, Shantanu Narayan. You think this is deliberate, that they are all headed by Indian Americans? The fact that Silicon Valley, which is like this veritable arm of the US government now in this war against China, the fact that Indian Americans are there, that's a very strong message that the United States is sending out.
So it's not just Indian Americans, it's Hindu Americans specifically.
Right.
Because let's not forget, one very important part who's going to be Director of National Intelligence is Tulsi Gabbard, who's not ethnically Indian, but she is a Hindu, a very devout Hindu at that.
The second most important person in the US
the second most important person.
intelligence
and this is one of those, those confluence of the stars, as astrologers like to call it.
Right.
Because what's happened is, remember, Trump was screwed over in his first term by tech.
Right.
He also passed the enabling laws that allowed tech to deplatform, debank, and do things like that, which he fell victim to after Jan 6th, right? And the sort of concerted tech, infotech campaign you saw against him. He has now out-teched tech. He has used tech against tech.
Right.
Let's face it, how much of this would have been possible had it not been for Elon Musk buying Twitter, which is now called X, right? So he sort of used them against them. The second thing is, with Hindu Americans, one of the very important things is the Democrat Party is saturated with minorities. First and foremost, they're the blacks, but then second, there's also the Latino vote. Even though Florida does not tend to vote Democrat, there is a very significant Latino voting population that votes Democrat. So Hindu Indians were always going to be in very severe competition. There is a reason that the first Indian American governors were from the Republicans. They were never going to be from the Democrats because there's no room for Indians up there because of black and Latino politics out there. And the Indians just don't have the sort of congregational power that blacks and Latinos have. So it was very natural for this to happen with the Republican Party. At the same time, like Pramit pointed out, most Indians tend to vote Democrat. Yet, this time, the shift to Republicans has been massive. It's still not a majority, but it's been massive. The shift in voting patterns in New York and California, even though they still remain blue states, has been very significantly towards Republicans and Trump. So you're looking at that sort of perfect confluence happening out there. And obviously, in all of this, people were going to get, how is it that one ethnic minority is getting so much? Laura Loomer keeps, for example, repeating the fact that she's Jewish as if somehow it shields her from attack. And at the same time, she says, we built this country. I'm sorry, it was white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. There was still
West
discrimination.
America,
there was still discrimination against Jews till about 100 years back. They were called kikes till not till the 1920s, 30s, even till the 40s. The Sulzbergers actually had to play down, the owners of the New York Times, they had to play down the Holocaust because they wanted to fit in with white people. At the same time, there's been the whiteization of minorities out there. Initially, Jews were not seen as white. Catholics, so Italians and Irish, were not seen as white. Then they became white and the Jews were not white. Then the Jews became white, and I guess this is the whiteification. I don't know if it's the whiteification of Indians, but it's sort of the same trajectory, and that's where a lot of the hate also comes from.
So is this Surinder, this point that Abhijit made, very interesting, whiteification of America, and is that one of the reasons that Indian Americans are suddenly so prominent? They're everywhere. They're of course all over Silicon Valley, and now they're in the White House. They're occupying very important positions of power. Is this what we're going to see in the next 4 years? That you're going to see Indian Americans emerge as objects of envy, and from guys who haven't managed to get into power, as Abhijit was saying. And so, what's your advice there? Grow a thick skin, or what? Move on.
Thank you, Sandeep. And America is a melting pot, so I guess the whiteification or the brownification is going to change with time, because a lot of millionaires now you see on the east and the west coast are not really whites. But having said that, I'll park another point about the other perception which prevails all over the U.S. more than this little fringe, rogues who nourish hatred is. There is a stand-up comedian called Gabriela Iglesias, and I'd gone to see his show about 3 years ago. And he says something very hilarious, and that ought to give you an idea of what the majority of Americans feel about us. He talks about how subtle and, how Indians are very, into their own lives, and they mind their own family business, and they don't kind of, amalgamate much into the American way of life. But he talks about two Indians who go to rob a bank.
Right.
And when they come back, and one Indian comes back with a computer in his hand, and the other, his other partner says, "You were supposed to rob a bank. Why did you bring this computer back home?" He goes, "I kept telling them that I'm here to rob a bank. They said, no. You are from tech support, so you need to fix our system." So that's what the majority of Americans. There isn't any American who wouldn't have a good doctor or somebody, a good computer guy, or somebody from academia not being in touch with them, because we're all over the place.
Yeah, we're all over the place indeed, Surinder, and thanks for highlighting that. And I think, as they said about the Indian diaspora in the United States, that they're everywhere except, like the Jews, they're everywhere except in organized crime. So that's the Indian-American dream for you there, and it's not going away in a hurry. And we're going to see that, more of that, possibly after Donald Trump is inaugurated on the 20th of Jan. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Surinder Lali, Pramit Pal Chaudhary, and my friend Abhijit Iyer.